Hello everyone, it is of course me back again with another review on the channel and of course another installment in my Christopher Nolan marathon of every single Christopher Nolan movie. We've done his first two films, we're now on officially the third film in this filmography, and it is of course Insomnia, released in 2002, kind of his first big budget film that he ever got a hold of, because Memento had a bigger budget than Following, but it was only around 10 million. This was really the first movie where kind of Hollywood looked at his first two films and thought, oh yeah, this guy knows how to make movies. How about we give him a bit of a bigger budget, give him a few A-list stars. Very excited to talk about this one because I have not actually seen this film since I did my original Christopher Nolan ranking video all the way back in, I believe, the start of 2019. I'd never seen the film until then, and I hadn't rewatched it since until in preparation for this review. So watching it again was quite interesting, very insightful in terms of how my opinions have changed on the movie, but with that all out of the way, let's get straight into it. So Insomnia follows two homicide detectives who are sent to a small village in the middle of nowhere in Alaska. The only catch to this place, however, is that it's currently experiencing perpetual daylight, which means that the sun doesn't go down at all. It is 24/7 daylight, and it makes it pretty damn difficult to get any rest at all. While going through this case and hunting down the man they think is responsible for these murders, an incident occurs that basically leaves one of our protagonists, namely Detective Dormer, in quite a spot of bother. And just like most Nolan movies, I'm not really going to give anything else in terms of the plot away, because this movie is, again, like a lot of Nolan's films, you're better going into it knowing as little as you humanly can, because it is a really interesting story. This very much feels very different from Nolan's other films. It's the only film in his filmography that he doesn't actually have a writing credit for, although he did actually write the final draft of the screenplay. He didn't give himself credit for it, so out of all of his films, it's the only one that he technically wasn't involved with the writing with. So yeah, quite an interesting film of his, so let's talk about it. And in terms of the positives, the first one I have to mention is the premise. The premise for this film is really, really good. Having this murder mystery in this place with perpetual daylight, it's quite a new and interesting way to go about having this kind of crime thriller that Nolan's going for now. Now, I should actually mention this is actually a remake of a Norwegian film of the same name, which I think released back in 1997 and stars Stellan Skarsgård. That's all I know about the movie. I've never seen that one, so obviously it's not wholly original because it is from that movie, but in terms of bringing it to a English audience, I thought it was a really cool idea and a really cool premise because it's something that I've never seen before, and apparently this kind of thing does actually exist, which I found absolutely crazy. But I really liked that premise of merging those two together because it automatically creates an interesting premise, but also helps to add a lot more tension as to what's going on throughout the entire film. And the performances as well in this movie are absolutely incredible. I mean, when you've got heavyweight actors such as Al Pacino and Robin Williams in this film, you immediately hit yourself with a jackpot. Al Pacino, this is probably one of his best performances that he's had in recent years because, you know, Al Pacino lately, he's had a few films where he's kind of foamed it in a little bit with his performances, but here I thought he was fantastic. I really enjoyed his performance here. I thought he was brilliant, and I really loved what he brought to this character. And he has a lot to do in this film. His character goes through a lot, experiences a lot of different emotions, and I thought Al Pacino did that brilliantly. Robin Williams, this is one of his most underrated performances ever in a film. I loved him in here. I thought he was brilliant. Really great performance from him. And Hilary Swank as well is also really good in the film. I don't really feel like I paid enough attention to her when I watched it the first time around because I don't know why, but I kind of had this feeling that she was quite an annoying character in the film, but I didn't actually feel that the second time around. I actually thought she was a lot better, and I really did like her character because she's kind of this, you know, person who looks up to Al Pacino's character of Detective Dormer, but then as she goes on throughout the film, she kind of uncovers a few things about him that make her question her prior beliefs about certain things. I really liked her character a lot, and then I think as a special shout out as well to Detective Eckhart in the film. I really liked him. He doesn't play a massive role in the movie, but it's very pivotal in terms of Dormer's story, and I thought he did a really good job as well. And it was funny because the actor who plays him, I actually noticed him because I believe he's in the Nolan's upcoming film Tenet, which I didn't realise until I watched the film and I recognised him. So yeah, he plays a really good role in the movie, and just in general, the acting throughout is very good. And as I touched on before as well, the characters as well are also really good and very well written. And a particular dynamic that I really liked was that between that of Detective Dormer and Finch. these two characters, you know, the protagonist and the antagonist of the film, and the relationship they have throughout the entire movie. Because this film was pretty ballsy, because we don't actually meet Finch in person until about halfway through the film. And usually that can make or break a movie in terms of, you know, if it's able to hold your interest until then, which this film does brilliantly. But then when these two have screen time together, it's just brilliant. Not just because you've got two amazing actors playing the roles, but also as well because these characters are in a way very similar. They have motivations and ways of thoughts that are actually quite similar to one another. At the end of the day, they're kind of two sides of the same coin, you know, that kind of trope. But it's not a trope because the way that it's played in here is really damn good. The dialogue is fantastic, and like I say, the acting is so good that I really enjoyed that chemistry between those two characters, and I thought their dynamic between one another was easily one of the strongest parts of the whole film. The cinematography in here as well is brilliant. This is kind of where Nolan, with his budget, just managed to make such beautiful looking movies, because I think Memento had pretty good cinematography, but this is just even better, and you can tell that with the added budget, Nolan just utilized that so well in terms of making this movie look even more stunning than his prior two films. There's just a lot of really beautiful crane shots and aerial shots that are absolutely fantastic. I love the color grading that they use in the movie, or at least the lens they use for the camera. It's really nice, adds this really heightened look to the film. It kind of really helps to add to the, you know, I guess the character's insomnia, for a lack of a better term, in terms of what he goes through throughout the entire film, and I really liked that. And just in general, there were so many brilliant shots littered throughout the film, and the pacing as well is brilliant. This is probably one of the best paced Nolan films that I've seen in a while, and again, this was something that I think I lamented the first time I watched the movie. I was like, oh, the pacing's alright, but I thought it was really good this time around. I was never bored throughout, and the film's almost 2 hours long, and it absolutely flew by for me. I thought the film was really good pacing wise, because you have this element of, you know, the case, they're trying to find out who the killer is, but then you've also got the fact that our main character is dealing with a lot of issues, and of course is dealing with insomnia and lack of sleep, and so it's always building up tension and building up other story threads throughout the entire film, so you're always interested, and you're never kind of standing around feeling bored or feeling like the movie is moving too slow, which I really like to see. The editing as well is fantastic, because of course, as the title of the film suggests, insomnia plays a huge role within the film for our main character, and I thought the way they portrayed that in the film through the editing was brilliant. I believe this is the same editor for this film that edited Memento, and I just loved how it was used in this film, because like with Memento, how the editing was used to have the audience get in the mindset of Leonard Shelby in terms of his mental condition, that he couldn't remember things, in this film they use it to really enhance the fact that our main character is just completely messed up in the head from a lack of sleep, and you really get that throughout the entire movie. You just sat there trying to, you know, process things, the way that it's edited, having flashes of scenes. It's the kind of editing where you'd probably see in other movies and it would come across as very jarring and very much a huge issue, and it'd be too showy. Whereas in this film, I feel like when they have these sequences of the character really suffering from insomnia, they did such a great job of placing you in that headset, but it not feeling too aggressive or assaulting on the viewer. It was really good, and the editing throughout is brilliant. And of course, the score by David Julian as well is also really good in this one. Again, I feel like this guy doesn't get enough credit, so I'm always going to, you know, highlight the score when it's good, and I really do enjoy his work in this film. Very, very good, very orchestral, a lot of really memorable music beats throughout the film. I'll probably say this is my second favourite score of his, just behind the Prestige that he's done with Nolan, and I just really enjoyed his work throughout the entire film. In terms of negatives, the only one that I really have for this film, and I guess it's kind of a harsh one, because when you have a filmmaker like Nolan, who's made so many amazing movies, it's kind of one of those criticisms that you could only really apply when you look at his filmography. The only real thing that I had up against this film was that whilst I think it was very well written and very well paced and structured, I don't really feel like it was as unique or special as Nolan's other films. The only real thing that makes it stand out is how, I guess, unoriginal it is in a certain way. And again, it sounds harsh saying it that way, but it's because of the fact that all of Nolan's movies always have a very unique defining trait about them. You know, with Following, it's out of sequence, Memento's out of sequence. Nolan always plays around with these mechanics that make his films feel unique, mainly the concept of time and hero and villain. And I just don't really feel like this film was, as I'd say, experimental. This very much felt more like a studio movie, a very well done studio film, but it didn't feel as special or unique as his other movies. And again, I think I mainly attribute that down to the fact that he didn't receive a full writing credit for this movie, and maybe that had a part to play in why this film didn't feel as, I guess, unique or as experimental as his other movies. Even on top of that, that's kind of like a very light criticism, because if this was in any other director's filmography, it would probably be one of their best films. But because it's Nolan and because he's made so many great films, that's what kind of holds it back a little bit for me personally. But I guess that's just what happens when you've made so many great movies. You know, the margins between your filmography in terms of kind of ranking and grading them becomes so incredibly thin. So with that being said, let me get into the final thoughts and score for Insomnia. Again, I really enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed this a lot more on the second viewing than I did on my first watch. Again, like I said, it's got a brilliant premise. I really love the cast and the characters throughout the film. The editing is fantastic. It's brilliantly well paced. I love the cinematography and the score and the added production values over his other films. So I'm going to give this one a score of a 9 out of 10. Like I said, I think it is a brilliant film. Not quite 10 out of 10, like I say, because I don't really feel like, compared to his other movies, it doesn't really feel as unique. But still, with that being said, it's a brilliantly well-made film and a very, very good and underrated thriller movie, in my opinion. So that is it for my review of Insomnia. Like I say, let me know in the comment section down below if you have actually seen this film, because this is one of the Nolan movies that I speak to a lot of people and they haven't seen or they don't know exists. So I'd be very curious to hear your thoughts on this. And if you have seen Insomnia, let me know about it down below and what you thought about it and if you enjoyed it as much as me. But with that being said, I want to thank you all very much for watching the video. Make sure to leave the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And I hope to see you all again next time.